Hey, what's going on, everyone? Vega here for SerpentX Tech, and I have my colleague with me, Mr. Carter, BitsBeTrippin, with us today to talk about a couple things, primarily focusing around Bitcoin mining, especially with the DAMES Act being omitted due to the debt ceiling deal being reached, which had a couple of concerning points with it that I just wanted to talk about with Michael, as well as a little bit about electricity as far as how many of these farms are on renewables, the percentages, stuff like that, because we're getting little bits of information from various self-reported surveys. So we just wanted to have Michael on to talk a little bit more about it. And of course, primarily that bill, which we'll get into in just a moment. But if you don't know, Mr. Carter has been in the data center scene for quite a while, been working in the technology space for quite some time. And everybody in my community should be well versed and familiar with Mr. Carter. But if you're not, he's also been in the mining scene for a hot minute, and is kind of considered the father of crypto mining. But Mike, how you doing? Oh,
Yeah, I was on mute. I was on mute, letting you do your thing. Yeah, doing good, man. I've been super busy. It's actually way more busier than I used to be in the crypto scene. Just as you know, we've expanded in general. But yeah, I mean, to say this space hasn't been a little crazy lately, as it's getting more exposure from just regulation and just different, initiatives that are afoot to try to, either, disrupt or cause a deterrence. Yeah, I would say almost in the U.S. Has been some of this, and very politicized, obviously, with all kinds of other initiatives when it comes from ESG, which has been around for a little bit. But there's a range of, I think, maturity that the government's getting to now to at least being politicized, being pushed certain agendas, right? And we're seeing that right now, especially with like the Coinbase and Binance and stuff, on the exchange side. And on the crypto side, we've obviously getting more ramped up on certain states preventing, a mining, proliferation on the grid. If we're talking New York and that kind of thing. But there's a lot going on in the scene. What we try to do, and what I've tried to do, is just show people how to navigate within that, understand the risk and where the space is, where you have crypto friendly states and regulators, and be able to participate. At the end of the day, it's always been about participation. There's, when you look at what the fundamentals of cryptocurrency mining, especially proof of work, is, a permissionless network that you can contribute to. That's what it's about, and that's where I try to keep focus at, and where any things that we're talking with people on how to become part of that, be part of that ecosystem. There's all kinds of different roles throughout that. If you're just an investor, or if you're in wanting to deploy capital, if you come from like systems engineering or a background, you want to build something. It's a growing industry, and every industry has red tape or things that are still being figured out with it. So, I don't try to get it all up in our feels. I look at it like, some of the stuff's political posturing. Some of it's also like maybe some questions that need to be asked. What kind of impacts are involved with, lots of power usage from, crypto mining. Like, let's educate people and see why there's, a proliferation of more and more mining hash power, and what's the incentive structures and stuff. So I think that allows us opportunity to talk and educate people too. So I try to never be deterred on this kind of stuff, and I think it's critical for us to have these kind of conversations and help maybe peel it back for some folks that don't have a lot of time to do a huge amount of research, and maybe give them some options and some links to do a more condensed version of research, for them. Not going to sit there and read a 300-page book on it, right? So, yeah, I mean, it's anything we can help in this space and try to communicate, I think, is critical.
and the fact that you just said read a 300-page book is funny, because I believe the filings against Binance was 130 pages, and obviously we knew what was happening for Coinbase was eventually coming with the Wells notice on the way. But yeah, so moving on to the White House position when the Dame's tax was initially proposed, it was only 10% tax on electricity used for Bitcoin mining. Now, I think that was more the news articles that got the terminology wrong, because I don't think they can tell if you're Bitcoin mining or if you're, mining Caspa, or if you're mining. Doesn't matter. You're using equipment, whether it's ASICs, FPGAs, or GPUs. You're using that equipment to mine currency, and that tax would apply to you. And it was a 10% tax. It climbed up to 30 before it got squashed, and thankfully it got squashed. But if this bill had gone through at the 30% proposed, how much impact? What are your thoughts on the impact that could have had on the mining here in the United States or North America?
Well, I mean, I think luckily these kind of things just don't go through. They go through a lot of, they may, even if it was an executive order, it would immediately be stopped by a court because they have to go through, the states to be able to implement it and execute it. But let's play it forward. If it went through, well, what it would do pretty much single-handedly would shut down most of the crypto mining in the U.S. Kind of overnight, kind of what China did from cutting a cord, right? Some people would look at it and try to look at their financials to see where they were at in the stack and take a risk of running with that higher tax and see if they could be operating, and with certain hedging and deals that they've made with cost avoidance built into the mining schedule with curtailments and stuff, they could absorb that hit short time. And so you would have some people still being able to mine for a little bit just because the way their hedge structures are. But it would really kill crypto mining in the US, which doesn't necessarily help the US in any way. It actually again makes us no better than like China when shutting down a particular sector. And that's not that's not in the spirit of the United States. I mean, that's like the fundamental opportunity and opportunist, the freedoms that we have with this. And this is where, like, I'll come back on it and to say this is where the United States is really good from a structure standpoint with regards to, enforcement and lawmaking are different, right? So we're going to see that play out with the SEC stuff right now. People can come out and make claims and even try to push enforcement, but then it's going to get locked up into court and they have a chance to lose it, right? It's not they say it and then it's done, right? We get to litigate it. And that is, at the end of the day, that's what's going on in the background with, lawyers looking at it like, okay, it looks like we're going to have to, fight for our position. And, all's fair in love and war with that, right? So it's like when you really peel back what cryptocurrency is and the fundamentals of being able to participate in a decentralized network, I think the code and the execution over the last, 13, 14 years have shown that this space can live and breathe without, in the midst of heavy regulation. It's just going to move. It's going to shift, right? And they're just going to move it somewhere else because it's not going away. So it pays for the government to understand how that looks and how they are a participant in it too. So, I think the short answer is it would really kill crypto mining in the US because it was just going to make us unable to compete. But that's very, it's not in a good light, I think, for the government to try to push that. So, I think this is a political agenda by a selected party that's pushing it. And it's to protect certain structures that are already in place, right? There's no other good reason to do this than to try to protect kind of a legacy system by just trying to kill it through a tax, right? And, luckily, it was cut. And I think as we get a few more years down the line here, there's going to be certain, folks in Congress that I think lean more towards understanding because they've done the due diligence on crypto and understand the the strength that it brings from that decentralized participation piece, to where the government could be a participant in it in a strong way. I mean, there's so much that could be done to lean out so many just legacy processes, leveraging this tech stack with a payment rail already built in, and something you don't have to necessarily pay for to leverage and use that much, because the incentive is built into the infrastructure. Somebody else is going to put the network up, and they're going after that incentive. It makes way more sense to build platforms and software stacks and everything around it. And now you're getting to leverage the rails that it has. And I think that's what's going to prevail in the long run, because at the end of the day, it still becomes the least line of resistance compared to everything else of if I'm going to build an entire tech stack that needs data centers and all this other stuff, and all this heavy regulation, lots of people in the middle of it that don't need to be in the middle of it. That is what the legacy banking system is. And I take a different approach on legacy banking than a lot of people. I understand what it was for and why it was there, and that it did serve to accelerate funding for projects and development, and allow people to buy houses and all this other stuff, right? It had a function and a structure, and given its structure during the turn of time when the ledger keeping turned into where you could have it digitally, it served its purpose. But it's being replaced, right? So it's like it's not personal, bros. That's what I try to tell like the bankers and stuff. Like, it's nothing personal. It's just like evolution,
right?
So it kind of served its purpose. We found people that do very bad things with it, right? I mean, anything out there has can be exploited for personal gains and for malicious people that leverage the tool. Legacy banking is a tool. There are certain people that are operators of it that do very bad things that we all know. Like, in every major bank out there has proverbial blood on their hands on the way they've done certain things, and some of that comes from the top, and some of it's the rank and file in the business that are trying to chase commercial capitalism bonus dollars, right? They make bad decisions because they're trying to improve their personal gain. That happens in almost every lick of any technology stack, because you have the human condition with that. That being said, like, I try not to, that's where I'm trying to go with like the stereotypical stuff, like, legacy banking. It served a purpose. Now it's trying to evolve. And I think the government will get there. Because we're going to have younger blood in there, right? And they get it and want, the fast click loot kind of, mindsets, right? They're not going to go through, 2-day, posting and reconciliation periods. They don't want to pay all the rent seeking fee structures that are in all the middleman stuff. So, we'll see how that goes. The taxes, all those kind of things, I think will work their way out.
Good deal. And I always try to educate people or advise them as best I can. I'm not a politician, a regulator, or an economist, but I always say stay involved in the conversation. And leading back to a question I have for you is, we do have some people on both sides of the aisle that are supportive of cryptocurrency or the crypto industry. As we move forward, do we have, would you say, and I'm not looking for specific names or anything like that, but would you say that we have the right folks in the right conversations in Washington regarding the crypto industry? Would you say yes or no to that?
I mean, I think it's good that Senator Loomis and there's a few others that have leaned forward with trying to understand, get their aides up to the point of being able to translate it to them, and be able to do a lot of due diligence on trying to understand the different implementation strategies, what is proof of work, what is lightning networks, what are some of the other cryptocurrencies that are out there, and what are their value propositions, and how can they be leveraged, right? So you have, I think, at least from folks in the Senate and the House trying to understand, there are certain selected members that are doing it to genuinely try to understand what's this movement. I mean, like, at the end of the day, these are constituents that they represent in their states that are passionately involved in it and hitting up their offices all the time, right? So if you think of the way government structures are, is, you know, these are representatives. Now, granted, there are in this doesn't matter. This goes all the way back to the Roman times, right? At the end of the day, politicians in general are highly influenced by who funds campaigns. And it's like I always try to think things a lot more like simpler. Like if you have friends and like you have one that's helping you out or something like all the time, you're going to feel compelled to, even if you're just a genuinely good person, you're going to try to help those folks. Now, granted, there's a lot of things that are certain capital that's given to some people that try to drive them to keep like legacy banking in place. You know, they don't question the why type of thing, right? So, and then there's expectations and stuff. And I think that's obviously, I put that back on the person. I think educating younger folks that are going into politics to say, you know, just question all the whys and make sure that there's no, you know, quid pro quo. I mean, like all of the different things that set people into the wrong path in policy. I think educating them early and making sure that, hey man, you're there to represent some folks, and you're going to have, it's kind of a no-win situation as a politician, right? You're gonna make somebody mad no matter what you do. I think if you come out in the most balanced approach of just trying to understand each of the situations and see what it's about, we're talking on crypto, we're talking, you know, a tech stack that has a set of features and does things. If they approach it from understanding what those features and how those things perform, like what the Bitcoin network does, how its incentive structures are, what it is, the understanding why there's a huge proliferation of proof of work mining popping up everywhere because people want to become a participant, and then understanding the way those network effects are happening without any kind of government, right? And then understanding why that works and why that's successful, and then just understand, okay, those are built in and they have certain features. What can I build around it, right? And then they start to kind of line up an understanding of that. I think some of the you know, government folks have understood it to that level, and understand the importance on it, and they're trying to write legislation that supports that, to not touch it and just say, you know, hey, this is something we don't need to involve or regulate. Now, granted, in a tax-paying society, you got to, it's like rent, you know, there's a rent seeking, it's a toll, right? Like you're leveraging a road that's been laid, and you have a toll on it because like somebody else's effort, right, built that. So having payment gateways and having a fair taxation of public services, got it. But there's all kinds of already structure like that. They don't have to invent the wheel on that stuff, right? When you convert it to some, you know, exchanges and all that, you can capture all that tax piece. You're always going to have a level of society that is not going to comply, period. And some societies have figured out like you just take that away from like personal taxation and you turn it into more public taxation, to where you're using it. If you're using it, you're paying for it. You got a value added tax when you buy things. And now at that point, you don't care if somebody files personal property. You know what I mean? I think there's evolved ways to still get the same way on the government side. I think they just need to look at the whole stack and understand that for them to function and for them to show value and measurement for society, that they could leverage this technology in a way that is way less complicated than what the current system is now. Because all we're doing is just stacking. It's like I would look at it like a really bloated program, right? One of the key things on, you know, like my day job aside of crypto, you know, if I'm building a data center or I'm moving a big, large application stack, as I go, it's like an application rationalization exercise. Like we could look at the IRS and go, look at all the different things that probably don't need to be there anymore that we could automate, and we don't need thousands of more people there. We could literally build smart contracts and separate functions that are governed by these tech stacks to facilitate all these things that you have a lot of folks doing, and make it way leaner, way less cost, less taxes. You know what I mean? Because now you've really pulled out the weight of the cost of that because you're leveraging the technology. But instead, that person doesn't want to go look at that tech stack and just lift and, you know, they want to lift and shift it and add more to make it kind of work for modern things. In like that kind of world, I would rewrite it. I would rewrite that application, have most of the basic features, have them both running for a minute, and then just, flip the dial over to the new thing, right? The government's not really approaching it that way because there's a lot of, special interest to try to keep those old programs running. But, luckily we don't live forever. And, there's going to be a natural attrition that occurs over time that I think, we're going to get there. It's just, unfortunately, it's taken a little longer. We're at 13 years now, right? So, but our space is maturing too. It has to mature. We have to get some of the fraud systems out, find, that bridge between like the FTXs of the world, potentially Binance's, a lot of the stuff that's in the Binance stuff, is, it's from 2018, 2019, when like it was Wild West. Who knows what the 2022 internal documents say? Probably a lot of it's like, hey man, we need to fix a lot of shit that we were doing wrong. And we'll see how this all shakes out. But yeah, I think it's I think everybody out there that's really grinding hard that I've met and that I interact with are genuine characters trying to make it work for them.
Good deal. And those individuals that you met far and wide, right now, and not to give any details, but I believe you tweeted it out. You're in the same state I am. You're in Florida right now, correct?
Correct. Yeah, no, I'm down in Tampa today. I'll be in DC next week, actually, too, for the whole week.
Good deal. Well, the data that's out there, because we talked about this in our last meeting for the Ethereum merge and stuff like that, and conversations went left and right, doesn't matter which side of the aisle you were on. We had pretty much voices from every side, and it was good to just have that conversation with everybody. I want to have it again in the future, which I'll schedule with my colleagues. But we got some peer review or self-reported surveys, and from your experience being out in the field, boots on the ground, eyes on these different facilities, and some of these genuine people that you've met, my question to you, after I read this to the viewers, is how many would you say are on renewables? And hang on to that thought. Because it says here, one peer review study from earlier this year shows the opposite, that Bitcoin's network use of renewable energy dropped from an average of 42% in 2020 to 25 in August 2021. Researchers believe that China's crackdown on crypto, where hydropower-driven mining operations used to be plentiful, was the primary catalyst of the decrease. At the moment, the rate in which crypto miners are using renewable resources is heavily disputed, and I agree with that. It is heavily disputed. We got different numbers from different people, but the blockchain or the Bitcoin Mining Council, an industry group, argues that 60% of the mining comes from renewable sources, which is 20 percentage points higher than what the previous number was provided by Cambridge Center of Alternative Finance. And then we have George, an energy analyst from International Energy Agency, says that while Bitcoin Mining Council likely has access to more data, its numbers can be self-reported survey that lacks methodological details, and encourage them to share the underlying data and methodology outside the research. So basically, wherever you're pulling this data from, Bitcoin Mining Council, please share it with the rest of the community so Cambridge and everybody else can really dive deep into it. So this article says, 42 dropped down to 25%, and then Bitcoin Mining Council says 60%. And then I got another article here that says about 59%. So out of all the different facilities you've seen and worked at, because I think you even went to one that is utilizing geothermal, correct?
So we have, so I had one in Washington, and I've had one in Colorado that both were using a level of geothermal, but I mean, it's just a mix. So it's no site that I've been to is short of a smaller farm. I will put a caveat there that smaller farms do have opportunities to create their own energy. I had one that had a couple windmills and solar plus a battery bank, and this was GPU miner, but they were using their own. It was an off-grid using satellite. They were using Viasat at the time and have since switched to Starlink for their network side, but was purely self-sustaining. Now, the interesting thing is that their math was enough to where they could run all the time, but in the wintertime they couldn't run 100% because they just didn't generate enough electricity for all the mining rigs. But on larger Bitcoin sites that are using the large amount of energy, it's just an energy mix. So it all comes down to, like, if I look at our sites, I have 2 sites, one in Illinois and one in Wisconsin, and then we're also responsible of supporting 3 other sites. And all the ones in Illinois that we're responsible for all take from an energy mix, right? So you get different from our provider. The overarching provider that's just taking all the energy mixes is called MISO. And if you look at the MISO list, it depends on the day. Like we could go very heavily swung to wind power if most of the windmills are on off Highway 55 and they're providing most of the power. So we could go from an 80% MISO energy fed to our substation that's mostly wind. But then we're also have coal, natural gas, nuclear, all in the same grid mix, right? So I shared a few months back a picture of that from the MISO screen of what the energy mix for the whole area was. And it was mostly, in that particular day, it was mostly natural gas. And when I say mostly, it was like 33%. And wind was 29%, so, and then you had a 16% of coal, and then the rest was a mix of different peakers, which could also use natural gas, which they rate them different because they're turbines that spin up just for a short period of time. But bottom line is, most of these large enterprises are not a single energy source, right? So where they're getting it is they're cumulatively probably rolling up all of those renewable classed things and looking at the totality of all those and just summing up those energy mixes, right? And getting to that 60%. If I was looking at ours, and I take the nuclear and I take the wind on a good day, and we're close to 75% renewable, right? Or clean energy, quote unquote. That it isn't like predominantly coal. But one of the sites that we do support is literally at a coal plant. I mean, it's literally up against a coal plant. But that coal plant also has one very large substation that's receiving, wind and solar services to the main sub. So theoretically, they have a mix also of renewable. So I think it's in the nuance, right? People are looking for there's a lot of hammers out there looking for the nails on this one. And what I would say is the general people that are trying to push a particular narrative or an agenda aren't really caring about the narrative, like, of how you got there. I mean, they can say, well, where are the numbers? But at the end of the day, anybody that understands power and understands how that energy mix works is you need a constant source that you can dial up and down, right? Because you always need some kind of balance and leveling, because wind and solar are not constant. They're variable. They're like a think of it like like energy. All of energy was a computer. Those are kind of like graphics cards. They're just additions, right, to the main service. Nuclear is a constant. Hydro is a constant. It can be a constant. So it all comes back to the mix. That's the first part. The second part of the question, where all the different sites that we've been to. So if I look at the ones that are on that we shared on the channel, like Merkle Standard, that's almost all hydro, right? So that's a whole hydro plant. They're at 140 megawatts. Mostly all hydro. Same thing with DMG. DMG is hydro, right? Both of those are in Canada. When we visited a few others down in Texas, some of those were mostly natural gas mixed with wind, because there's a lot of wind power down there too. They did have some sliver of solar, but I mean, again, it just depends really where you're at and where you're at on the transmission side. So I don't get really too caught up in the ESG conversations, because I think as a consumer of power, I think it comes back down to your best opportunities are where you have a lot of variance, because you can flatten the line for the power company. If you have secondary markets on that power market, these smaller power companies and co-ops are purchasing and hedging a certain amount of power for their particular area. They always overbuy. They have to, right? Because they may get times that are peaking, and they have to be able to, they want to have that in their bucket. So it's just like a size of pie thing, right? They're going to plan out a time, and they're going to see all their peaks, and they're going to say, I want to buy, 180 megawatts for this particular area. Well, they may only set it 60 megawatts most of the time. And sometimes they'll slide up to 130 megawatts. Well, what they don't want to do is have to go back on the market at that moment in time and buy. So they're trying to overbuy. So what they try to find is incentives to find particular miners that can come in there and level that out. So they want to sell as they can that power, right? Because you're helping the local communities, you're helping the power company be able to invest more into their infrastructure, build out new facilities, all that kind of stuff, because you're essentially buying up that power and thereby lowering the cost for most people in that particular area. That's the way it is for our current co-op. Is we are able to over time, over this 3-year hedge that we have at this one, is to potentially lower the cost rate. And we're seeing that already on each year. On June, they go back and rebase the non-NCP and CP rates, so the coincidental peaks and non-coincidental peaks. Before, we were at $7 and $2 for NCP and CP. June's numbers came out. We have several miners that have been deployed in this area that we're in, and the NCP and CP rates came down. They went from $7 down to 38 cents. So the totality of use for a normal resident now is lower, because now they have less risk on the hedging, right? So why I'm saying all this about and not getting caught up in the ESG is because we don't own, crypto miners and consumers do not own the roadmap for a power company to get green. The government puts out mandates of what their goals are. Power companies have to adhere to said mandate over a period of time, and they set a budget and they set a planned path to get there based on their revenues every year to say we can put this much into our projects. Crypto miners are high use people that come into an area. If you bring up the power, you're buying the extra power there, you're providing them more capital to then now upgrade those grids. So this is the argument that's not normally discussed. That all gets caught up in power mix. And I'm like, dude, they already have a path to try to fix the power mix to be more renewable. It's just a good steward thing to do for society. Like, I think everybody's got that. Everybody's on the same page there, I think, right? Nobody's like, oh, let's just burn the smokestacks, right? Nobody's doing that. So like, our ability to be able to put the U.S. to become a big leader in crypto mining means that more capital is getting invested in it, meaning more flattening the curve, and then more things can move those roadmaps to get more renewable. It's like a self-fulfilling prophecy there of like, we have a roadmap and now we have capital. Now we can get there faster. Like, we can move things left.
The United States and many of the countries are trying to move to a greener future, right? Less carbon emissions and all that good stuff. And I think we talked about this, you and I, privately, is that everything you just said is the demand that not crypto mining facilities, basically data centers, right? These guys, they're basically data centers, is what my understanding is. They are basically doing compute workloads. A compute workload can vary, but they're there for the demand. And even Texas had a situation, I believe, if anything, last year, where the power companies are like, "Hey guys, can you turn off for us? Like, right now, demand is high. We can't sustain it. Can you turn off?" And they turned off. And so the power or the capability for these mining operations to be on a good term with or good relationship with their power companies or distributors. To be able to, oh, hey, we need to shut down for a couple hours so that way they can keep things leveled, load balance, whatever they need to do, I think is a good thing. And then you just said it's going back into, they're getting that capital, and then they can deploy that elsewhere to improve their infrastructure. Because we do, in the United States, let's be real, we need to improve our infrastructure. A lot of our infrastructure is ancient from the industrial era, and we need to improve it. And we've been moving in that direction. I think mining as a whole, not just Bitcoin mining, but mining as a whole has kind of lit the fire underneath the rear end to move faster in towards that greener / more renewable future where we're not as dependent. I do believe we need more nuclear, but I know nuclear is a sticky subject where a lot of people don't want nuclear plants near where they live and stuff like that. I understand why, considering the accidents in the past. But nuclear technology, or the advancements made in providing nuclear energy safer, cleaner, better than these old 1940s, 1950s plants, it makes it a lot safer and kind of mutes that point as far as the dangers and concerns. There's obviously inherent dangers, but nuclear energy, solar energy, hydro, and wind energy is something that could definitely reduce our use of fossil fuels or any type of old school carbon.
Well, yeah, I mean, so nuclear, I mean, the tech's been around for a long time. Nuclear, what's happened is just the general supporting systems around it, the security, the business processes that are now known to effectively and securely run facilities is elevated a lot more. You have way better accountability, chain of custody. You have way more telemetry for facilities now. So like nuclear is a very special thing, right? Like it should be what I mean, by and large, I'm very pro nuclear because I understand and respect the fact of the science that allows for all that stuff to occur, right? I mean, like it's
mind blowing.
It all comes back down to just us being responsible and understanding the importance of the securities around it and all that, right? And we have way more technology stack than back when they were building plants for the first time, right? So, there's camera systems and satellite systems that monitor it, and sensors and radars and all these things that allow you to effectively make sure that there's no more really crazy accidents. There's a lot more oversight. There's a lot more lessons learned, right? So the politicization of it has just unfortunately driven us kind of backwards in that standpoint, to where, you can effectively and control a state of, natural physics energy creation, right? You put things next to each other, it gets hot, you boil water, you create a steam engine, and by the way, you can do that forever. Right? So what a fantastic way to do it. Unfortunately, we get caught up in all the other little things in our unfortunate societies where, I always make this comment sometimes when like something's going good and then somebody breaks it, or breaks the process because they did something stupid or something. And it's like, this is why we can't have nice things.
Right.
That's a perfect example of nuclear, right? It's like, damn it, man. Like, this is a great answer to a lot of stuff and we could have unlimited power. But, we can't have nice things because, certain people didn't listen to certain things, certain hardware architectures caused issues. If you look at Chernobyl, and the secrecies and the lies and everything that happen when you get into that kind of structures in different countries and stuff cause these gaps. So we got to work with what we have, and then renewables fine. I try not to get caught up in the whole ESG arguments. I think it's just being a good steward. If there's better technology that doesn't put pollutants in there, probably a good thing, right? I mean, I'm behind that, but I'm not going to let it drive my conversation, right? I'm not going to try to say, oh well, I can can't mine unless it's 100% renewable. It's like I'm a consumer of electricity. I want to know that they have a plan on the entity that I'm working with of what the roadmap is. Like, hey, are you putting more windmills up? Are you doing positive things? And does my purchasing of power help you on that? Or are you going to use it for that? Right.
Right.
That's about as far as we can go with it. I'm not going to drive that schedule for them, and nor am I putting up towers and stuff. That's not our business. Our business model. We're trying to build strong security infrastructure for a decentralized network that could change the freaking world, right? I mean, that's our passion. That's what we do. That's what we like to do, right? So, it's just, there's all these like fair weather folks that get caught up in what the next narrative is. And it's like, we try to stay more focused on what we're trying to, provide and educate in this space for stuff. Right. So, yeah, I mean, it's being part of a builder and larger construction side of it, though. I've had to learn a lot about zoning, learn a lot about how these power contracts work, how the money's spent, how to optimize and better our implementation strategies to lean out cost, right? To speed up timelines. These things are very complex projects at the end of the day, that have a lot of moving parts, that you have a lot of dependencies on, and it ends up coming into a management exercise of due diligence and making sure people can meet timelines and making a lot of pivots, like any other big project. But
you got to be able to adjust and be able to pivot.
Yeah, I mean, that's just trying to get into the enterprise side of it. I mean, but I also have much love for the home miner too. I love the simplicity of being a participant at a home level. You have 200 amps, you allocate maybe 50 to 60 amps to your project, and you're part of a community and you're sharing a lot of information back and forth. It's way leaner, way easier. It's just the way, the nature of it's like commercial capitalism. Once there's enough incentive, it starts to, you automatically, it starts to coagulate, right? It starts to you start trying to metastasize in something larger because okay, I got it figured out. Let's scale it. And that's just, I think that's the kind of natural, thing that happens with this. And we got to kind of figure that out. Now there's certain networks out there that do not have huge adoption, but have interesting approaches to, some of the features on chains. I mean, stuff when we talk Flux, and I've talked to Ravencoin, fair market launch stuff. When I look at some of the other projects that are trying to implement new features, right? And those I think are healthy too, because, if there's developers putting out new stuff that can't be done on Bitcoin because Bitcoin Core is never going to take an update like a hard fork, right? You're never going to evolve, right? Or see what these are even an opportunity to evolve. And that gets into Bitcoin ordinals and all that kind of stuff, right? People find very interesting ways to leverage, Taproot. Who knew that it was going to turn into the hit project on that wasn't about ossificated messages. It was about, let's put pictures online, man. But it is what it is. It's created an opportunity. It's created something that interests people in that way. I'm not trying to judge how somebody wants to implement something on a chain, right? It's oh, that's cool. That's not what I originally thought we would do with it, but the ability to build things on top of the network or around the network is kind of the whole point. It was permissionless. And somebody took advantage of that permissionless and made something new. I think that's the healthier part of it. And it's teaching everybody a lesson of what comes from the open source nature of this stuff. I think it's personally healthy, as long as, the intentions are, semi, forward and not trying to just screw it over. If somebody's trying to cause an attack on it, I mean, that's a different conversation, but
right. So what do you think about the miners improving over the years? Because you had the luxury of being able to play around with various bits of hardware, everything from GPUs to ASICs, and I can say with my limited time, much shorter than yours, I've definitely seen the efficiency improve on these particular devices. But I feel like we're hitting a roadblock right now with the current Bitcoin difficulty, hash rate, and just where we are right now. You need to deploy quite a bit of these ASICs to yield something good, especially if you're the at-home or put something in your shed type person. But the efficiency has definitely improved. Do you think we'll see a nice jump in as we move to 4 nanometer TSMC and stuff like that processes? Do you think we'll see a nice jump in efficiency again?
I mean, we're at the tip of the spear now, so no, I think it's going to slow down unless there's a breakthrough on how we compute. We're literally at the end of the fabrication. What we'll see is, I think, from like a terahash rating and all that, is there may eventually be an evolution in the next core phase. And what I'm saying core phase is we have kind of everybody building facilities right now. They're designed around the shell of what essentially is the S19, from like shell spacing and plugs and all that kind of stuff. What the lessons learned that are happening right now and the measurements, like we keep a lot of metrics on our side of like how many power supplies we're going through, our curtailments where we pause mining versus shutting down the miner all the way, and does that have much impact? The thermal grease, the maintenance cycles of cleaning everything, containers versus buildings, rotation of machines, risk of things falling and breaking, and all the amount of fans we go through. There's a lot of waste in the crypto space, right? When it comes to that, like there's a lot of recycled power supplies and fans that are just tossed away because we go through them very quick. So I think the evolution of being able to move to a more efficient system, if that's like 4U blades, something that's not so has a high fail rate, right? I mean, some of these basics have a high fail rate, and I mean, just in our own operation, I mean, we have to overbuy on the machines to maintain to our power level, right? Like the 4 containers we can hold 1440 in total units, but had to go up to 1,600 units because at any point in time we could have 20 machines down. So we're just swapping machines, right? Because we want to max our allocated power to its best ability, and I don't have time to troubleshoot a machine and then try to fix one and put it back. Like it just means we're not using our available power allocation. So we just quickly swap out to a good machine, then take the box back, fix it. And then we have this bench stock, right? So there's this basic ideology where you'd like everything you want to have deployed. And I got that. But like the realities is there's so much maintenance with these machines. And that's not really covered because there's a lot of bigger shops that don't have YouTube channels and don't get on the ground and cover it. And that's a lot of the flying around. Anybody that's following me on Twitter and stuff sees that I'm somewhere all the time. I've been kind of a road warrior lately. And it's helping a lot of different farms. We've found a lot of optimization paths and trying to streamline their operations, automate a lot of stuff in the software to help self-recover and keep as much hash rate as possible online. But like the next phase of this needs to be not so much the power savings as it does the improvement on not having machines down as much. We're nowhere near like, people talk 5 nines and you think of the server architecture. I mean, can you imagine if like HP servers and Dell servers and all this stuff that, let's say a whole data center, the data center may have 2,700 machines, 4U or 2U blades, like 2,700 of them. If I had remotely even 10% of the fail rates that I would have in the Bitcoin space, like the data center would be like, what the hell? It would like cut contracts with like Dell or something, right? The build standards, the reliability of these machines is very subpar. All of them. It doesn't matter if it's WhatsMiner, Canon, Bitmain. They're just not there yet, right? I mean, and that's just a stark reality. And I see that with some folks that, spend all their money and buy one machine and they're like, finally I got one, and it runs for like 3 months and then their power supply goes out. And they're like, what the hell? These things are like $400 or $300 to replace the power supply. And it's like, yeah, man, that's kind of what happens. And it's like, wait a minute. Now, okay, I bought it for $2,000. Now I got to spend another $400 in it. I haven't even made $400 in this machine yet. You know what I mean? Like it's kind of one of those things like, oh crap, like at least on the GPU side, we only lost like risers. You know?
Right. Swap out the riser, USB cable, call it a day.
Yeah. Like imagine losing your 1500 watt power supply after 2 months, and you had to buy a new one, and then like 2 months later you lose it again, right? So that would not work, right? But that's kind of the realities that are being dealt with in the Bitcoin mining space right now, and the people absorbing it are the investors, right? They're investing in the companies, right? And it just becomes part of the modeling you do to figure out what's your ops cost. Like, right, you have your cap cost to build your operation, and then your ops cost is what it takes to maintain it. And it's not just people; it's your replacement of stuff. And then the real kind of down in the weeds folks look at their downtime or what their total uptime is, right? Like, and they're looking at what their lost opportunity cost. So like if you bought 1,500 machines, and let's say you're guaranteeing that you have at least 1,400 up, that's going to demand that in a 24-hour period you're going to make X amount, based on difficulty and all that, right? But you're going to estimate what you think your return should be. Well, now if you start adding a whole bunch of $400 costs here and there, it starts to deplete that, right? So part of the stuff that I do with a lot of folks that are opening up new ones is that we set a lot of under promise over deliver stuff, right? You're getting 1,400 machines for 4 containers. You need to buy 1,600, and in that 1,600, pretty much guarantee about 1,250 are going to be running at any point in time. That's going to be your measurement, right? And that your O&M effort of somebody replacing stuff is going to be just constantly swapping machines. And you're going to need probably, X amount of dollars in back stock and other hardware. And there's your total cost of ownership. And it's done up front. It's not kind of caught in the back and you're wondering why your ROI went from 17 months to 22 months, right? Or something to that effect. It's just the realities of it. So yeah, I think over time, it's not about the improvement of the hash rate and the performance. It's got the focus needs to be on the improvement of the quality of the machines across the board. And it's almost like a Tesla type of thing where, a part goes out and it's like impossible to get like a PIC board replaced or a circuit. And there's a lot of good programs out there that are showing people how to do it. We've sent our guys to a couple of them. That shows them how to replace, capacitors and ultra small heat sensors, temp sensors, things that throw off the board. But man, like I have one guy that spent 3 days on one hash board in one machine and fixed it, and it's just like that math don't add up when you have thousands of machines.
Right. Speaking of which, as we get ready to wrap up here, guys, is recycling. So you said there's part like fans. You go through fans. Are these components? And I know a lot of people, like, say, for example, let's take Osprey. Osprey is taking FPGAs that died. They're deballing the chip, the main chip, and then they're reballing it onto a board that they customize to then resell to users. Now, regardless of Caspa's being profitable or not, how is the recycling in the Bitcoin side of things? Is it subpar? Maybe if our quality got better, or if Bitmain, WhatsMiner, and all these companies, their quality were better, then we wouldn't have so much recycle or electronics to recycle in general. But is that something that each farm is undertaking, not only trying to repair or get a service provider to repair the devices, but if they can't, if those devices are no longer repairable, are they working on making sure they're recycled?
Yeah, so like we do that. We have a couple different foundations we'll work with locally. Christina Foundation is one of them in our St. Louis area, but that take and recycle, send it to electronic recycling company. Like if you have just a dead hash board and you can't get parts for it, or it's really truly dead and you haven't extracted parts and good ASIC chips as an example from them. A lot of power supplies are the same way. Like if you have a burnt out power supply, it's not a fuse, it's not a capacitor, it's like part of the system boards maybe burnt up or broke. Typical recycler that's going to strip the metals and all the different things in the boards and stuff to extract that is, we have a process that we do. We're actually going to have a thing on one of our YouTube videos to show where to ship, where dispose for you through a couple different agencies, or give you the direct link. You can send it straight to those folks. But we do that because we had our own that we were kind of dealing with that was on a shelf, and we kind of like Bitmain's real bad about it because you can't just take a hash board and slap it into another machine because the hash boards are symbiotically linked to the control board and the power supply. So some of the newest ones you can move, like What's Miner, I can slide a hash board out of one, put it in another. So that's what ends up happening is you end up robbing kind of Peter to pay Paul type of thing, to where you get one good machine out of maybe two dead ones. Where you might have a good a good control board on one, two dead hash boards on it, but then you have three good hash boards and a dead control board on the one, right? So now you just swap them over, and now you've consolidated. Now you have one machine that everything's dead in it. And those ones would be like likely candidates for recycle or that. But yeah, I mean, having a good process, that's just like one myopic thing on the O&M, right? Is recycle. Part of it's, analysis, part of it's, software try to recovery, to where, some farms are just going to put a different firmware on there and run one hash board on a machine. You know what I mean? Like the two other ones are dead, and they'll just run the machine until all three hash boards are dead, right? That's a methodology that's used too, where people don't want to spend the money to replace the hash board because it just doesn't make sense. If I have our guys spend 3 days on it, that's roughly like $400 in time. So it's too expensive. Like when you buy the unit for, a used unit for $1,000, $1,200.
Well, as you said, that's just one piece in a giant puzzle, very small piece, different nuances. And Mr. Carter here does, obviously consult and help out various people in the industry. Very busy individual. It's hard to get a hold of him. You got to schedule things in advance, but they do have a wealth of knowledge. So he's always sharing that information. He did a video not too long ago. Make sure you guys go check it out. I have a link down in the description. Design, develop, and build Bitcoin mine. Gives you like some basic information, and he breaks it down throughout the live stream. You should definitely check that out. And if you do reach out to Mr. Carter, be patient. He's only one man. He's doing the best he can. His team is doing such a wonderful job. He's got some great people around him. So bear with him, but definitely check him out and make sure you just give him some time to get back to you if you do reach out. Your subscriber base does not match I don't even know what to call it. Not your ambiance, not your demeanor, I don't know. I don't know how to explain it, but good peoples. When I met you in person, I already knew you were good peoples through our various interactions online. But when I met you in person, I definitely knew you were good peoples, and you're very open source, and that's what I like. You're not trying to safeguard this information to prevent the world from finding out your secrets in this industry. You're trying to share this information. You're doing the best you can with the time you're provided, since you're always busy. So I thank you for everything you do for the community as a whole, and I really appreciate you taking the time to speak with me today. Do you have any final thoughts or words you want to leave us with?
Yeah, no, I mean, we got editor back, so we should have some more content out there. Again, no paywalls or anything like that when it comes to the content side. So yeah, if you check it out there, yeah, I've been doing it for a long time. I mean, the channel was done in 2013, so it's probably one of the first ones. I think it was one of the first. There were no cryptocurrency mining channels when I made BitsBeTrippin. So, and a huge community has grown up around our involvement in this space. So, yeah, I've never been like really caught up on the subscriber side. It's more just educating people, sharing our experiences. We're more of observe report, and we do everything that we share, right? So like we're in it, like, so if you're seeing content from us, it's because we have either bought the thing or we're trying it, and here's our experience, right? So that's the way I've always kind of treated it. And yeah, now we've really expanded into a larger business, and yeah, it's what we do. We passionately love doing it. So
You can definitely tell the passion from your works and the information you provide and how you disseminate it to the world. But that's it, guys. I took up enough time of Mr. Carter's today on June 7th. This video is obviously going to be coming out late, so bear with me. You guys know how, obviously I got a life too, so videos are usually recorded, edited ahead of time, and then released later. But definitely check out links in the description. Hit the like button out there. Go check out BitsBeTrippin if you haven't already. And I hope you have yourself a wonderful day. All right? Take care. I'll catch you in the next one.